journey started about 10 years ago when I started collecting teas from around the world. So collecting all of these teas, I stored them in a little trunk. This was actually my dad's old vintage trunk. So that actually became the inspiration for me to start a blog called Tea Trunk. And I started writing about all the teas that I owned, and I started learning more about each one of these teas that I own. And I soon realized that I wanted to study tea and learn more, not just about the teas that I'm tasting, but also about the culture and the history and the origin of teas. So in 2011, that's last year, I took off to Sri Lanka to study at the Tea Sommelier Academy there, and we traveled over 6 different tea estates, living on the tea estates, living at the tea estates, and learning tea production hands-on. Working weekends are so much fun. Working weekends mean that you're drinking gallons and gallons of tea, and you are recreating tea time experiences for other people. And what I enjoy most is sharing with people my love for tea. It's that moment when you share a cup of tea with someone with the same joy that you have in bringing that cup to someone. My advice to everybody who's looking out for an education in tea, I think firstly it's very important to go to a tea producing country. So whether you would take up a course in India, Sri Lanka, Japan, Taiwan, China, but please be sure to study while you are living at a tea estate, so that you experience tea hands-on. Second, certification is important. There are different levels in the certification where you learn not just about tea tasting and tea brewing, but also about tea production and tea estate management. A lot of hotels now have tea rooms, have dedicated tea time rituals, and are increasingly looking out to employ tea sommeliers to work with them in different capacities, either creating tea blends or creating a tea and food pairing menu, or creating tea infused food. The options are endless. If you're working as a tea sommelier with a 5-star, you will definitely be paid handsomely, and you can expect anywhere a starting salary from 50,000 upwards per month. If you're more on the entrepreneurial plane and you're starting out as your own line of teas, then the opportunity for expansion and for scaling up depends on your own ambitions. Okay, so we are actually brewing green tea sencha right now. So just take a teaspoon of tea leaves. So I'm going to put 1 teaspoon of tea leaves into the tasting cup, which is roughly about 2 grams of tea, and top it up with hot water completely, and we close the lid. Now we let it brew for a good 5 minutes. So before you pour out the tea, give it a good stir so that you make sure that the infused tea is not sitting at the bottom and is evenly infused. And the most important part is pouring out the brewed tea. Now it's very important that you get even the last drop of the tea out, because the best and the most flavored tea is in its last sip. After a good 1 minute, take the tea leaves and invert it onto the lid. What we've got here is the infused green tea. And coming now to the third and the most important part of tea tasting is tasting the tea itself. So here's how we do it. So roll it a couple of times before you actually finally sip it. And when you actually sip it down, that's when you should observe how much the tea coats your mouth and what are the flavor notes that come to your mind. I think my very primary advice to everyone who wants to become a tea sommelier is be patient. Training your palate requires that you taste tea almost every day, and that's something that I practice. The second thing and an equally important advice would be to go back to the root. Trace your cup of tea back to its tea leaves and back to the history of how this tea came into existence.